Hello and welcome to the first evening panel titled Student Occupations for a Free Palestine in Youth as the Avantgarde. My name is Ina and I'll be your moderator for tonight's debate. All of us here on this panel are united in a common cause to struggle for Palestinian liberation in whatever way we can and for however long we must. Throughout this panel, we'll discuss methods, aims, and the different contexts of our collective struggle, and try to discern how these differences inform, contrast, and enhance our cause. With me are comrades from 5 cities in the region which were involved in the struggle for Palestinian liberation. So first off is Fernando Barrera, who was involved in the Student Committee for Palestine in Vidam. Next off is Lori Šramel Čebular, who was a member of the youth organization LDH from Ljubljana, and was also involved in the encampment of the Faculty of Social Sciences here. The next person is Sara Gurdulić, who is part of Studentice za Palestino from Zagreb. Next off is Ognjen Petrović, who is part of the Initiative for the Support of the People of Palestine from Belgrade. And finally, it's Ines Cetra, who was present during the encampment in Trieste. The panel today will be in the form of a moderated debate, and each of our comrades will have time to present their movement, political work, and views on organizing. Due to the time limit and constraints, the answers will have to be somewhat brief in order to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to present their experiences and opinions. If we have the time, after everything, we will open up the panel to some questions from the audience, but please keep your questions concise and brief, and I'd like to ask all of you to keep your answers brief as well, if we get to that point anyway. So let's start off. I think the first thing we wanted to start off is to discuss the discussion by giving each of you an opportunity to present the context in which your political struggle developed. We want to understand how your local or national context, specifically the institutions you focused on in your struggle, contributed to the genocide happening in Gaza. What were your political goals and what were the outcomes of these struggles? And Fernando, maybe we can start with you.
It's on. Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm Fernando from the Comitato per la Palestina Udine, the Committee for Palestine in Udine. I will talk a little bit about the regional context. Udine is so the context, Italian context, didn't affect us. You know that Fratelli d'Italia is in the government, this fascist party, but it really didn't affect our fight because it was very strict to the university first and then to the council of the city. Anyway, Udine is quite a conservative city, although the major of the town is from the Partito Democratico, which is this social liberal party in the center left, which anyway means nothing. But first our fight focused on the university. We have some ideas that we had some clear points, but anyway we made them very vague so that we could negotiate them. We wanted to have like an official, I don't know how to say. The university say condemning the genocide in course. We also wanted like some scholarships for professors and students that they could use as humanitarian corridors to escape Gaza and Cisjordania. And also we wanted to make public all the agreements between the University of Udine and industries regarding the weapons production and also universities from Israel. Just because Udine is a very conservative city, this forced us to take a strategy that proved to be very useful, and is that we didn't do anything that was to be seen as like that we were making all the time the first step. So we would just lead the vice chancellor of the university to make mistakes. And for example, we first present using a student union all the demands, and he just left the room. That was what was seen to be the excuse to occupy the main building of the university. Then we were making actions to force him to receive us and discuss. And in the end, we got not everything we wanted. Of course, there was no official condemnation of the genocide. But this is normal because in Udine, the vice chancellor is normally the first step you take to be the mayor of the town. So if you do this, you're lost because no one is going to vote you. But we got the scholarships, we got 3 of them. The university agreed that they will participate actively, economically, in the reconstruction of the university system in Gaza once the war is over. They will also sponsor a collection, I don't know how to say, like to get some money so we could help other organizations. We canceled an mobility agreement with the Ben Gurion University. With every university in Israel collaborates actively with the occupation, but the Ben Gurion University is one of the most involved. And we got also, like, we will organize some events and we decide who is talking and what they are talking about. So in the end, it was kind of nice. We involved also the professors. They wrote a letter in support of our cause, and because we didn't get this thing like published in every agreement with universities and other industries, but they said that they agreed with this and they would do it on a personal level. Like everyone signing the letter would publish all the output of their research and stuff. So in the end, this was actually very nice. Then when we thought we couldn't get anything else from the university, we moved to the council of the city. We made like a demonstration, which in Udine was kind of huge, because in Udine, normally you don't see these kind of things. And then the mayor wrote to us to discuss some stuff. There's an agreement with a business which is based in occupied territory, and they consider the possibility of cancelling this agreement. And also we are now moving towards, in the 14th of October, there will be a football match in the context of the Nations League between the national team of Italy and the one of Israel. And we got, this way we prove also that the Committee for Palestine in Udine became a major political actor, because they retired the sponsor for this football match. And this caused interesting public debate between all the parties and also some other institutions, and also we involved the government of the region. So this is where we are now. We are like, actually, our idea is to cancel, like to make this football match not to happen, and we are like talking to other organizations in Friuli and Venezia Giulia and also other regions around, so that we can make a huge demonstration or whatever that maybe scares the mayor, because there could be like some problems, and that's the only option we have, to cancel this match. That would be something that it would be interesting also if some organizations in other parts join us. And yeah, this is the part about the regional context. Then about political international solidarity.
We'll get there.
We will get there. So each of us is talking. Yeah. Okay, sorry. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. If it's all right, I would actually like to start my answer on the level of the state and then narrow it down to certain institutions, because I think we can see a very similar pattern here. So Slovenia as a state is to some extent in a quite of an interesting position when we discuss its contribution to everything that is currently happening in Palestine. On one side, Slovenia is one of the few countries that has just recently recognized Palestine as the state, while on the other side, it is still very much allowing cooperation with Israeli companies, institutions, etc. And I think that this double-sided game that I've just mentioned very much reflects on the level of academic institutions as well. So when we were planning to start our actions as Lista Demokratičnega študentstva, or LDS, we began our actions in January, actually. And the first action was organized at the Faculty of Social Sciences. We organized a protest reading of Palestinian poetry, and we were also reading speeches. And this was actually the first time we demanded that the university that the faculty, as the biggest social sciences institution in Slovenia, takes a stance against the genocide. And when we did that, we really weren't taken seriously. The response of the leadership was basically, yes, to just take things slow, and they didn't take this demand seriously at all. So after that, we did some more research, and although at that point we already knew that the Faculty of Social Sciences does not have any institutional ties with Israeli universities, we did realize that the University of Ljubljana and other universities, other faculties under University of Ljubljana do have these institutional ties. So then we basically organized a roundtable discussion with the pro-Palestinian activist, Stephanie Westbrook. And this was the time when we added another demand, and that is that the University of Ljubljana breaks all institutional ties with Israeli universities that are directly contributing to the reproduction of the genocidal state of Israel. And we informed the media about this. We have also sent an email with all of the demands to the PR office of the University of Ljubljana, and we received no response whatsoever. And that was a few months after we organized our first action in January. So at that point, it was already very clear to us that the next step and the next method that we should use is occupation. Because we did realize that the Faculty of Social Sciences is not taking any steps further with this. The University of Ljubljana was not responding at all. And we also decided for this method because we knew that actions of protest, such as petitions, no matter the amount of signatures you get, will not be taken seriously by these institutions and will be swept under the rug and ignored, lastly. And we can see this happening in practice all the time. So we tried to prepare for the occupation as much as possible, but of course we didn't know how the process is going to go, what the reaction is going to be, and all of this. We didn't even know if we will be able to enter the building. This was something we discussed a day before, if this will be even possible. When we started, there was police everywhere around the Faculty of Social Sciences. But then when we actually started and we managed to occupy the biggest classroom in the building, the support of the people was really big. We were constantly receiving food. People were asking in what way they can contribute. There was even a company that we still don't know which company it is. It remains anonymous, but they send us pizzas for everyone. People were asking if they can lecture at the educational program at the occupation. So really the support was huge. And I think this is a really good example that when you organize from the needs of the people, they will support you. And in Slovenia, the support for the Palestinian cause is major. It is big. There are people who really support this. So on the 6th day of occupation, the Faculty of Social Sciences did accept our demands. It published an official statement that was written by the students who were occupying, that what is happening in Palestine is a genocide and is a consequence of systemic violence and settler colonialism. And we do recognize that this was an important step and it was a step in the right direction, but we are still waiting and trying to push that the University of Ljubljana accepts our demands, because this is the moment when we move from the symbolic level to the level when we actually have and see material consequences. All throughout these occupation, it was very interesting to see the discourse that the rector was trying to create, that the ties that University of Ljubljana has with academic institutions in Israel are actually not that important, there is only a few of them, etc. And this is absolutely not true. And this is this double-sided game that I was mentioning at the beginning, that we can see on the level of the state, and we can consequently see this on the level of our academic institutions as well. So yes, next step is the University of Ljubljana and material consequences. So yes.
Okay, thank you, Lori. My name is Sara, and I represent the Studentice za Palestinu, so Students for Palestine initiative. And we sort of gathered around this panel discussion and public event that gathered all the students at Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences in Zagreb, Activism in Academic Communities, Free Palestine Movements. It was organized by Maja Osmančević, an activist and a student. And after this panel, where we discussed ways of organizing in support of Palestine, because so far the support came from fragmented sources, and even though young people were coming to protests and panels or book clubs organized by the Free Palestine initiative, we weren't organized as a group. So we created this group mailing list where we planned this public intervention. So a few of us gathered to make a banner that we hung up on the window of the Faculty of Humanities in Zagreb, which was followed by an official group statement and requests for both Faculty of Humanities in Zagreb and University of Zagreb. And we also sent this letter to various media. And as far as we know, we took this opportunity to address the ongoing silence in the academic community, because as far as we know to this day, there hasn't been issued a single statement, official statement from a university in Croatia in support of Palestine or regarding the ongoing genocide. Now we're planning to take these requests further and present them to the Faculty Council. In making of these requests and research, it is important to acknowledge another key group member, that is Ema Marača. She works at Radio Student in Zagreb. She and Maja and I have been researching and will present the gathered work in September to our Faculty Council. And we have like these 4 grouped requests. I will summarize them. So the first one is regarding the faculty's recognition of the ongoing genocide and issuing a statement in support of Free Palestine. Further, we want the faculty to join in on the long overdue request of the immediate ceasefire and follow the BDS and PAGB guidelines for boycotting European to match other European universities, to put an end to all the cooperations with Israeli universities and other academic institutions. We are also requesting a full and disclosed list of Israeli academic institutions our faculty and the University of Zagreb are working closely with, because we couldn't find that many sources, even though we were trying to dig it up. And the last request is directed towards the possibilities inside the direct and immediate scope of the faculty's authority in view of institutional support regarding free language courses that we offer, legal support and class participation for Palestinian students and families in Croatia. So as I've said, the research we've done so far shows that not only University in Zagreb, but other universities in Croatia and academic institutions have long-lasting relations and international cooperations via EU's cultural and or education programs such as Erasmus, EU project, etc. with Israel. And it has been difficult to find and gather a complete list of these cooperations, since they're not publicly displayed. And that's why this request for transparent cooperations is so important to us, since we're a young and starting group. We want to know what are direct places where we can put pressure. And our faculty is legally obliged to provide us this information, so we're hoping that this starting point, that this will be a starting point for further negotiations with or against faculty, University of Zagreb and other institutions. So far, we've tracked down the cooperations with Barrera University, Tel Aviv University, and other than that, University of Zagreb is in process of organizing participation in Erasmus Plus projects with Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Also, we've been taking part in other mobilities with a research fund of Hadash Medical Organization, University of Haifa, Ben Gurion, University of Sheva, and etc. So this shortened list showed us how deeply rooted our ties with Israeli academic institutions are, and how this whole silence regarding the genocide came to be, as we depend a lot on the money coming from these institutions. Yeah, so the list isn't complete. We just began our research regarding also the personnel and academic ties, and are expecting a more detailed one after presentation of these requests, and once we include data from the Department of Jewish Studies and Holocaust Research from our faculty. And our current main goal is this presentation at the Faculty Council, and also the mobilization of our group mailing list, because as I've said, we have a lot of fragmented support, but we're still trying to find ways to organize amongst ourselves and to take direct action. And also by doing this, we're hoping to provide like this set of local guidelines, so other students in Croatia who are dispersed in various universities and academic institutions could take same or similar steps in research, in taking action. And yes, even though we're primarily rooted in and have begun as a student activist organizations, we are cooperating with Free Palestine from Croatia, and that is pretty much everything from me for this question.
Hi, so my name is Ognjen. I'm from the Initiative for the Support of the People of Palestine from Serbia. I would like to open my answer with a bit of an analysis of what's the specific context of Serbia in relationship to this question through the lens of what the relationship of Serbia is with Muslims as a general denominator, especially because of the wars of the 90s, first in Bosnia, then in Kosovo, and how that shaped the public eye. Leaving when the genocide actually started happening, the main people who organized around this question were activists who were there for a longer time, who already kind of knew what was going on. Some of them had done research on a much deeper level. Me, for example, I was familiar with the question of Palestine needs to be free, Israel is settler colonialism, that's quite clear. However, research was lackluster, to say the least. Then when we started getting into actual research, very quickly after the war started happening, we came to understand the position of Serbia in relationship to arms shipments towards Israel. What is the actual context is that Serbia as a nation has the reminders of the Yugoslav military industry, and via that it simply needs somewhere to export those weapons. That's why, for example, Serbia exported weapons, according to sources that we have, to both Azerbaijan and Armenia during the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. And what's happening in Israel now is that Serbia, via the specific company Yugo Import that we focused on, has major arms shipments towards Israel. So our primary demand when we organized as a collective quite quickly became the goal for Serbia to stop exporting arms to Israel in the similar sense as Colombia currently stopped exporting coal. When we started organizing the protests, very quickly after, so that was already in November, we even got together with the Palestinian embassy and the Palestinian diaspora, which is something that gave us quite an important legitimacy in Serbia regarding being people who organize these protests. This also helped bring closer the Muslim community of, well, specifically Belgrade in our context, to the struggle. What was previously mentioned about, as I came to understand it, most other nations around, especially Europe, have the pro-Palestinian struggle fought specifically through universities, which is something that we definitely have to discuss. As the comrade from Udine mentioned, Ben Gurion University in Negev, that's a university that's very closely cooperating with the University of Belgrade. However, the Serbian universities in these relations are typically quite subordinate and receive more from the Israeli universities than Israel gains. However, we still have this question as something that can be opened up, and students have been a major part of the initiative since its very beginning. However, we also did participate in some student organizations, especially on an international level, which is something that I'm going to get to later. For example, when a few of our comrades, I'm glad that both of the comrades are included, came here in Groningen in the Netherlands, where we participated in organizing a sit-in of their university, which organizes with the Israeli universities on a much higher level. And there we picked up on some quite important lectures on how to actually organize around universities. This is something that we're definitely going to be thinking about quite a lot in the nearer future. The main activities which we organized were specifically at the forefront the protests. So the city center protests were quite massive. We managed to get quite a lot of people, and especially in the period before January, the call to these protests was quite well. So a lot of people would come, a lot of people were quite interested, and now in the summer when we did it again, we still actually managed to pull quite a few people. What's quite well is the social media being done and people staying informed through that. The other very important thing is our actions towards the specific company Jugo Import. So we are dealing with a very specific issue. We are not focusing, in the similar sense of focusing on universities, not collaborating with universities in Israel. In the same sense, we focus on Jugo Import as a company, which directly funds and trades with the Israeli army, and specifically their director Jugoslav Petković. One very important action which ended up being much more important than we thought were the posters which we made and put all throughout Belgrade and Novi Sad regarding Jugoslav Petković, Netanyahu, Biden, and Aleksandar Vučić, the president of Serbia, as people directly involved in the genocide. So this had a few interesting outcomes. One of them was in Novi Sad, where we kind of managed to break through this media darkness that I'm going to mention a bit later, and actually some media covering it. And the other one was the arrest of one of our dear comrades, that being me, regarding this specific action on a date in which I wasn't in Serbia, as I was in the Netherlands participating in another occupation. However, what else was very interesting and important were the street actions which we organized. One of the most effective ones that I would mention is our Starbucks action. We went in front of a Starbucks. We served homemade coffee, or as Slovenians would call it, Turkish coffee. And we served it to people and gave posters explaining the complicity of Starbucks in the genocide in Palestine. Another one which was quite important was the very hidden protest in front of the embassy of Israel, which was very hard to organize. That's the first protest in front of the Israeli embassy, since the Israeli embassy came to be in Belgrade, and no media covered it. And that's something that's been our most important context. It's the media darkness. A comrade from RTS, the state media in Serbia, mentioned how of course that no media is going to cover you, implying the initiative, as we have a CIA office on the top floor of the building. And in that sense, it's simply really, really hard to get out of the media darkness. No one covering these protests, which are quite massive. They organize a lot of people, a lot more than some protests which have these media. They cover 10 to 15 people organizing a sit-in, but they don't cover hundreds and hundreds of people organizing in the city center with pro-Palestine flags. I think we barely managed once or twice. We had multiple of these, multiple hundred people protests completely not covered by absolutely anyone. The only way we managed to communicate is, I would say, mostly through Instagram. And in that sense, the arrests and the fines, they gave us something quite clear to think about. And in communication with the police, we managed to understand on what level they are actually concerned regarding what we are doing, and how less concerned they were while we still organized just simply protests for Palestine. And when we started attacking the ruling structure in Serbia, and we started attacking a very specific business interest in the form of Yugo Import and the weapons industry, at that point it started to hurt a lot. Then they started arresting people which are not in the country, as I had to bring my passport to show that I was not there for the time where I was arrested, and I was still screamed at and called the ringleader who organized whatever happened with the Yugo Import building. In that moment, the fines that our dear comrade, which is right here, took of 1,500 euros, I believe, for supposedly unannounced protest, which was announced. And in that sense, now that comes to what our actual goals are. Of course, if we're talking about the goal of stopping genocide in Palestine, we still haven't achieved that. If the goal is to stop exporting weapons to Israel, unfortunately, we still haven't achieved that either. However, if we're talking about breaking the media darkness, raising awareness, actually organizing people, a lot of people came to us through this. A lot of some of the people that are here now that we brought from Serbia started organizing with us exactly through these pro-Palestinian actions. You managed to get into the entire activist team to become socially aware. And in that sense, I would say that we are quite successful, but there is still a lot of work to be done. I would just be very quick to finish off with what I mentioned at the beginning, the context of Serbs and Muslims. Muslims in Serbia, being painted with a very broad brush, were, until the genocide in Palestine, characterized as NATO puppets. They are a NATO protectorate. They always serve America, etc., etc. And now, when NATO and America and similar imperialist structures are directly attacking a Muslim nation, such as the Palestinians, this discourse is starting to break down. And now finally, the whole social dialogue between Muslims living in Serbia, so Bosniaks, Muslims, Albanians, and Serbs is starting to slowly crack open. And this is something that we are especially going to be focusing from now on with some actions that we have planned for the future of going into more more Bosniak parts of Serbia and actually opening up a social dialogue there, trying to actually bring these two communities together through the specific question of the genocide going on in Gaza. That's it.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Ines from the Assembly for Palestine in Trieste, and I'd like to start talking about a bit about our journey, because in Trieste, just as the comrade from Udine said before, we live the same censorship and the same conservatism from that it's typical in Italy. So. Our journey started in November, the last November, so it's almost been a year. And we're like, we started as collectives, all built together, and we're an informal reality, so we started from the bottom of Trieste, and we occupied for simply one night the economy building in the university. Our rector didn't take any action about this. He simply mocked us, calling it a camping. So okay, but in April we obtained a public meeting with our rector after a 3 days occupation, where we managed to invite Stephanie Westbrook, the activist for Palestine, and we managed to get a public meeting with our rector to talk about the criticity of our university being having lots of agreements with Israel and the weapon of Israel. So we managed to talk with the rector, but it was very it was like talking with a wall, because he simply said that hey, if there are agreements between our university and Israel, so show me the papers. And we said, like, we don't have the papers right now here because they're encrypted and we can't have access to it. So he simply mocked us and went away. But we managed to show him the papers, attaching them on the walls of our university when we decided to do the acampada in the university square. This acampada lasted 21 days. It was very hard because in Trieste, even there's lots of people that come from the Balkan route, and even if there's lots of people that are racialized, and for example, now it's been closed, but there was the silos. That's a big reality where lots of racialized people simply lived there because they didn't have a place to go, and they were simply pushed away from society. Even there's this reality of in Trieste, there's not support for this type of actions. So we got simply our rector mocking us or not presenting in the acampada. We got students that mocked us, called us monkeys, told us we're dirty, and telling us we have to go away because if their complicity between Israel and our university is simply to build bridges to have a cultural exchange and to be more flourishing, because we shouldn't, in their opinion, we shouldn't cut off bridges with the Zionism, even if there's an occupation on illegal territories, because people are being genocide. Sorry, but this is so absurd to me. I still have to process it in my mind. So that's it. Our occupation lasted 21 days. We tried to enter the academic senate because we prepared a motion to discuss about these agreements between Israel and our university, but our motion, composed by 20 points talking about this problematic situation, got completely ignored. They discussed it, but it didn't last, so we're trying to restart in September. Along this, we prepared a dossier, a group of documents showing the problematicity of these agreements, and also the extreme in-depth agreements that our university has with Israel, because it's surprising how much Trieste is financing the weapon of Israel. So I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all for your answers. As we've seen from everyone here, and also through the struggles of other comrades all around the globe, it's clear that political action is diverse in form and in content. It shows the world that youth are capable of understanding the different power dynamics and also economic interest in the background of the struggle for Palestinian liberation against the Israeli apartheid state. We recognize that humanitarian actions are necessary, but do little to contribute to any material change. Even though justice is not easily achieved because of police brutality, this clearly calls for a system of international solidarity. So our question is, how do you analyze the system of repression, and how can we organize an international system of solidarity?
Regarding this issue, we've seen how easy it was from our institutions to make public statements against Russia when they invade Ukraine, against Iran when these massive protests happened. And everything seemed to be about human rights, as they put it, and they were always claiming to some high morals and stuff. But then when this thing in Palestine happened, which anyway, like what happened is just another event in a series of events that last 75 years, they seem to do nothing. This clearly shows that in order to organize internationality and an internationality response, we have to first realize that if we want to do it here in Europe or in our very particular region, we have to be clear about the fact that Italy, Slovenia, Croatia, and the European Union and the United States, all of them are part of the same imperialist camp, so that everything that they're going to do is always going to be motivated by their own interest. The interest of an imperialist camp shows and takes political form within the institutions, and it may be the state or smaller institutions anyway. Like Israel is one of these. It was a clear ally. It's an integral part, essential part of the imperialist camp to which the European Union and the states they form. So if we want to organize political movement that goes beyond our borders, we have to be clear about some stuff. Like there are very particular fights that take place within the institution. Like, for example, what we did in the universities. It was a very small fight. We didn't even want to destroy the university. We just wanted it to make some changes and do some stuff. Then, if we want to do something bigger, if we want to, to which extent we can expect the institutions from this camp to do really something about what is going on in Israel. If Israel is actually one of the actors that just fights for their own interests, there's nothing that we can do. This is important to understand, because every political movement that tries to fight these things should go independently, totally. It should be totally independent from institutions. This is something that should be definitely clear. Also, the thing that it happened, and it's happening in Gaza, it was a very it's been a driving force politicizing people. Like it's because of different reasons. The problematic in Palestine, it's something that it's well known to some extent in Europe, while some other things are not that well known. Like, for example, I realized a few days ago that in Serbia they are like fighting with the government because of this. They found this lithium deposit and then they were to exploit it. Our fights, I mean, fighting just for the cause of Palestine, of course, is something essential, but it doesn't make any sense to do it only on its own. Like, it's much more. It's not fighting for a very particular event, but to the whole structure. This also implies that we have to make moves to understand what are the problematics in its region, so that we can really organize a response that goes to every level in the very regional context to the international one. And yeah, that's what I wanted to say about this.
I think that's a great answer. Thank you. Maybe just to add upon that, I would say that humanitarian action is, of course, still very much important. It can save lives. It can provide safer migration. But as it was mentioned before already a bit, we should approach it with a realization that it primarily serves as a band-aid and does not address the cause of the problem, which are the international systems of oppression that you, Ina, also mentioned in the question. And the international system of oppression that is most important to mention here is imperialism as the last stage of capitalism. And this is something that we reflected on a lot in our organization during the occupation, where we had the space to address this, we didn't focus enough on discussing with the students and clearly communicating to the public that what is currently happening in Palestine is just the most brutal indicator of everything that is currently wrong with the system. And if it wouldn't be Palestine, it could be some other country, and there are many other countries where similar things are currently happening. And this is a consequence of imperialism, because the imperialist system needs wars like this to fuel its existence. And Slovenia, as the nation state of Slovenia, is directly contributing to this by being a part of the NATO pact. And bringing this realization to the surface amongst the youth, and even broader than that, is something that we wish to focus on in LDASH, also in our future actions. And the second part of the question, so how do we organize an internationalist system of solidarity? It is a broad question, but firstly, maybe to discuss the term solidarity, because I think besides the terms democracy and community, I think this is one of the terms that has been to the greatest extent emptied out of its meaning by institutions, by the states. European Union uses the term solidarity on every step, and I think in that context it means the exact opposite of what it should be. So when we wish to stand in solidarity with certain people who are being oppressed, it is crucial that we listen to them and that we act accordingly and follow that. So, for example, boycott, divest, sanctions, or BDS is a method that was developed by the Palestinian people. It is a very accessible method that almost any individual can follow if they want to contribute to the cause and resist multinational corporations that are supporting Israel. And secondly, with methods like this, we can organize in our local environment, and we can achieve that Slovenia, University of Ljubljana, the companies here, corporations, ports, whatever, do not collaborate with Israeli institutions. And this way we can best enable Palestinian people to build their own resistance in their land. And internationalism in that sense means exactly that. Understanding and working with your locality, and then also connecting internationally in the interest of overcoming these systems of oppression. And we in LDASH often use a saying that we picked up from other progressive youth movements around the world, socialist youth movements, that is, if the systems of oppression are global, our response needs to be international. Our resistance needs to be international.
Thank you, Lori. I would just like to say that your answer was very inspiring, and now I don't have to read my first part because it directly follows what you've just said. So I will just skip to this other part of the question, or how we've as a group thought about it. And it is this need for people, students, to find an answer to this question of showing solidarity, to showing international solidarity. Like when I was thinking about it, in a way it's a utopic term because it offers so many solutions from various points, various fields of action. Like as you said, like there are simple steps we can take, like following the BDS, the sanctions. But this need for answers was also like a major point after the talk and the panel that Angela Davis held this year in Zagreb, and almost all of the questions from the audience held like this similar plea and a need for simple or more simple answers. to question of solidarity, and that is also something that Emina Bužinkić from Initiative from Free Palestine from Croatia was talking about last year in a podcast with journalist Matea Grgurinović, and she asked her, like, how do we build solidarity? So I would like to share her meaningful answer, and that is, when facing this extreme violence, it is hard to find an answer to deal with and try to find a way to stop it within our scope of action. It is difficult to say what that scope means for a particular person. However, it is extremely important to act from our own register of empathy and solidarity in the way we can, taking it a bit further each time. And that's why, as students, our first form of action was this, taking this responsibility to take action on the level of faculty, university, and academic community. We have yet to plan our future steps, but I'm here in the name of our group in order to learn from all of the speakers, Palestinian activists, thinkers, and all the other representatives at the festival. We want to see and find the best way to join other groups in the region and further to learn from them and learn how they've managed to stay hopeful in spite of failure and dismissal, and how to transform that into further action. So we see these opportunities or opportunities like this festival where we can learn from each other on how to transform our defiances, mobilize the support we've been getting, and by turning down a faucet at a time or simultaneously as a step towards building such a system of care and solidarity.
I would like to thank the previous comrades. A lot of their answers as well line up with mine. We, of course, in Serbia do humanitarian aid as well regarding families that come to Serbia from Gaza, helping them get jobs, places to live, basic funds, etc. But as Lori mentioned, it is a band-aid, very clear on that front. But you know, we can't deal with the illness if the person bleeds out. And in that sense, of course, humanitarian aid needs to be something that we permanently keep doing. But what's most important is to always be aware of the fact that neoliberal capitalism is a global system. It's a very networked system that's constantly working together. And even speaking about camps of it is sometimes a hard topic to discuss, and who aligns with who at which moment, and in which sense this is actually transnational. So Palestine is, Israel specifically, is the linchpin of neoliberal capitalism today. And breaking this linchpin helps understand the global context of imperialism to a lot of people. So as the comrade from Udine mentioned, a lot of people now became aware that the media lies. It's very clear, especially Western media, but the Eastern media not that better. Very, very few exemptions. They all lie. And when they look at the news about Palestine and Israel, they lie. And then they look at the videos and actual evidence, and then suddenly, aha, okay, so this is something quite different. However, when the exact same media reported about Ukraine, it was a completely different story. Then what CNN says, it's completely true. Putin is Hitler. That's very clear. That's how we view this situation. Same thing is in Serbia. I'm not here to defend Putin, war criminal as well as Zelensky. But the thing is that we need to be aware that in Serbia, the situation was completely different. These same media that support Israel now in Serbia, they supported Russia, saying that Russia is fighting a holy war against NATO in Ukraine, etc., etc. So people have this, are slowly managing to learn that the media is a form of oppression. It's, in a Gramscian sense, or in the Althusserian sense, the ideological repressive apparatus. So something to always be analyzed and viewed. And capitalism, and especially neoliberal capitalism, ever since Pinochet, ever since Chicago Boys managed to put it together, implement it throughout the world, very, very clearly works on a transnational level, getting into absolutely every pore of society. And in that sense, internationalism can never be something abstract. Internationalism is a very, very concrete, clear physical thing that you can do. It's something, it's a matter of organizing. It's a matter of being very clear on what you are against. For example, we have the anti-war conferences in Serbia with the Committee Against War and Imperialism, something that the Initiative for Palestine is very, very much involved with, which organizes a lot of anti-NATO, anti-war activists from all around Europe, all around, well, the world. We managed to get to Asia as well, and help to actually unite in a singular front and discuss these issues. But we're very far from getting to the point that we can deal with them on a very clear basis. But we need to know the enemies. So we need to know that the EU is not a good thing that's gonna help anyone. It's a thing that helps genocide people in Palestine. And it's never not gonna be that until it stops existing. Same goes for NATO. Same goes for absolutely any part of the Western imperial bloc currently aiding the genocide in Gaza. And that's something that it typically manages to slip the minds of liberals back in Serbia, but a lot of activists here in Europe, to call Slovenia Europe, as you like to run away from the Balkans so much. So in this sense, what we do is very concrete. We go to Slovenia. So we sent a couple of us to come here to meet the pro-Palestinian activists here, to get to know the scene, who is here, who we can work with, who we can't work with, and how we're gonna keep working forward. We send someone to Sarajevo to go talk with people there. We send someone to Macedonia, a great, a completely isolated nation for some reason, with a very strong pro-Palestinian movement that is simply poorly integrated into the, let's call it a bit more internationalist, but in reality European scene of pro-Palestinian organizing, which is also not focusing on universities as well. We went there, we're getting context, and it's not just us doing this. This is everyone who knows what they're doing and what each and every one of us should be doing. The entirety of the pro-Palestinian movement is simply going around. And that's a very, very clear thing to do. You don't have to even, if you can't afford, especially us from Serbia, we can't pay to go to, I don't know where, the Netherlands, even though we managed to somehow get one person there. It's clear enough, it's able to simply watch the news, to communicate with people, watch social media, which is unfortunately now the only thing that's helping us stay informed regarding these specific things. And reforming institutions, as the comrade said, is not the way to go. We need to be very clear that also the Palestinian issue, people are dying, but solving the problem of Palestine is not going to solve suffering in the world. Ukraine, people are dying in Ukraine. Helping bring peace in Ukraine is going to be a great thing. Hope we achieve it. We will achieve it. But it's not going to fix the global issue of neoliberal capitalism, which is absolutely reliant on the wars which Lori mentioned. The military-industrial complex is something that perpetuates war again and again and again. And even the Rio Tinto protests going on in Serbia, we as now not as Initiative for Palestine, but as other socialist organizations, we absolutely go to all of these protests. We try to fight, we talk with people, but these protests, we are aware that are being led by liberals which are very deeply connected with the EU. And if you bring a anti-EU, so the EU is pro-lithium exploitation, gonna ruin the ecology of Serbia. That's a long story, let's not get into it. But the EU is for it. However, if you go with an anti-EU placard to this protest, it's going to be a problem. You can't bring it there. Let's focus on the real enemy. The real enemy is Rio Tinto, a very deep EU-connected company. But the problem is not EU. Let's just pick our enemies and not go against the EU, who can be sometimes good. What they do with this is they use up the public energy. They did this before. They used it for their own elections. And what happened? Nothing, because 2 years later we again have the exact same company. These protests now also happened 2 years ago. Now they're happening again. What changed? Absolutely nothing. And I don't know how long they can simply suck this ecology issue for their own personal gain, which is also just another issue, as well as Palestine, as well as Ukraine, as well as all other major things which are happening right now that we all need to be aware of. Other conflicts going on around the world, in Africa, in South America, especially as of now. So we need to be aware of all of these movements, and that's where internationalism lies. It lies on understanding the global systems of oppression as a united system, which is something that we constantly need to fight on all fronts, and not to do it through reforming institutions, to be very aware that some things which we do are symbolic, but that the major fight needs to fight on the basis of changing material conditions, on the basis of attacking the problem at its very clear economic material core. That's it.
So the answers, all the previous answers were very inspiring, so I would not like to be redundant, but I will try to give it a go. So in our opinion, as a movement, we should listen more to the resistance instances and less to the media and the Western media in general, because information in the West is very corrupted, is very censored, and is very, it is not right. It is important to listen to the instances of people who really struggle, so in this case Palestinian people, and to try to respect what they're asking to us. For example, we answered to a transnational call from the Barrera University that was redemanded by Palestinian Italian youth. So we answered to that call in order to set up our protests. And we think also that it's very important to be educated. Education can't be always alone, closed in our rooms, but has to be communication with people who are struggling, communication with other realities. For example, things like this, moments where we can discuss about problems and about all what's happening in the world, and try to, at least to maintain alive and breathing our rage and our volunteer to change things. That's it.
Thank you, everyone, for your answers. I think all of them have been deeply inspiring and enlightening. And I hope that also all of them gave the audience something to think about further than just this debate. Maybe something to think about when you get home. Research a bit yourself as well on it. But now I think that we've gotten to the point of defining international systems of repression. I think we can move onwards to our role in the fight against those systems. So the role of young people. The young people and young organizing in bringing about societal change. Like all of you are aware, young people all around the world are usually placed in a unprivileged position without access to economical or cultural commodities. We have seen this through recent years, specifically in the rising rents all around the globe, in how difficult it is to access certain basic necessities throughout our studies, and as well as inheriting this ecological nightmare happening to our planet. This in terms gives rise to inequality, puts us in a position of obedience, and general fear for the future of our personal lives and public expression. Having experienced said inequalities and being forced into the position of oppression births a spirit of rebellion, a sense of urgency and duty to be a driving force of change. Considering all of this and everything we've talked about in the previous segment, how do you view the position of young people in society in general? Do you think that a need for change has to come from young people? And if so, why?
So regarding this thing, I don't think that the changes in society must come from the young people. I mean, it's responsibility of every segment of the population. But it's true that when historically and everywhere you see that normally political movements are driven by the youth. So I was wondering why could this happen? Why is always the case? And try to get from there what are then our responsibilities as young people. So we, the young people, are a very particular segment of the population. You can consider many reasons for this to happen, like maybe this thing of kill your father, or a very acute sense of rebellion that must come from, I don't know, somewhere. But the thing is that we are in this moment in our lives in which we have already abandoned our child life, and we have to come to accept the social contract that is offered by previous generations. And it's in this moment in which we are in the position to decide whether we want to accept the society that they give to us, or we want to change things. So this is, I think, the importance of the youth, the political youth organizing. It's not that it's just this event that it happens. It must be understood. Okay, we are in this situation. What is then our responsibility? Well, our responsibility is understand the reasons why we don't want to accept the society that is given to us. We don't want to accept the social contract. We don't want to participate to all the things that we seem that we don't like, and we don't want to be part of this. Then our responsibility, what it is. Of course, keep with the fight, like not renouncing to it, not getting tired of this fight that sometimes seems useless, but keep on this, even if we get older, and then convince the other parts, the other segments of society that might have accepted already the social contract that was given to them, to again reconsider why this society really is not the society that we want. This world is not the world that we want. This is, I think, the responsibility of the youth. That's it.
Thank you. I think throughout this discussion, I think so many important points were made, especially in the questions before, the analysis of the system that I think we need to constantly highlight and remember ourselves of and educate others on this. But I think what ties all of this together is really this question, because political youth organizing needs to serve as a basis of all of these discussions and all of these thought processes. And the comrade has already mentioned, if we look at the history of different resistance movements, youth has always played an extremely important role. The most famous example being 1968 and 1969, the student movements. And we don't even have to go abroad to see this. Also in Slovenia, for instance, the occupation in 2012 against Bolonska Reforma and other things that were currently happening back then. And also, if we go a bit further back in the history, the very important role that youth has also played in the partisan movement here in these lands. So we can very clearly see a pattern here that the youth sees the wrongs with the system and tries to take a leading role addressing it. And this is something that we discussed a lot on in LDASH. What means to be a youth organization and what is our responsibility when we carry this youth identity. And throughout reading different texts together, manifestos of different youth movements from all around the world, maybe these are just a few conclusions that we have come up with when we talk about what is the responsibility of the youth. So firstly, we realize that it is extremely important that we know our history well. And by knowing your history, we don't mean the history of the states, of the oppressive leaders, of any sort of power structure. This is a way of analyzing our locality and knowing our society. And we can see how important this is also now currently in the context of Palestine, where there is a systemic push to completely redefine the history of this territory. And it is very important to resist against that. So one of the roles, one of the tasks of the youth is to learn and know your history very well. Secondly, very much connected to history, our responsibility as youth is not only to rely on institutional education. but to educate ourselves and also to educate others, the people around us. And in the Slovenian context, as we do have public education, there is a very common saying present that the university is autonomous. But everything that happened in the last year is just the last example, the cherry on top, showing that this is not the case at all. And a few years ago, in collaboration with another organization, CEDRA, we as LDH have written a text that critiques this position exactly, that the university is not autonomous and that it acts as an ideological apparatus of the state, of the capitalist state. And this is where the importance of self-education really shows. We should organize reading seminars, discussions, everything that we can think together and discuss things. And lastly, and of course most importantly, also coming from the question for the youth, is to politically organize ourselves and others in a progressive organization. And being in an organization is really the backbone that enables you to realize that all of the doubt, anxiety, hatred that you have towards the system is very much valid. And we can see what is happening in Palestine currently, and it makes complete sense to feel this way. But the importance of political work and organizing together in an organization also enables you to see beyond that and realize that it is possible to take steps towards a different reality and organize actions to actually contribute to change, and then maybe slowly build a different system and build a different society. And perhaps with a few of these steps or all of them in mind, we can actually as youth become the vanguard of political organizing and the vanguard in the society.
Thank you. I would just like to take a step back at the first question and kind of rethink how what our problems were with mobilizing young people in Croatia and how it came to be. So for the local context we're working in, it's important to mention this general feeling of lethargy and resignation towards politics, political actions, protests, etc., that is happening in Croatia. For example, this panel that Maja Osmančević held, we were expecting a huge turnout afterwards with the mailing list, but in reality, only a few people kept responding to our plans. So the current, and what is also happening is that the current political protest climate in Croatia is mainly focused on the right-wing, also anti-migration takeover that happened in this year's parliamentary election that had a turnout of only 50% voters, and that was a huge thing for Croatia since it was the biggest turnout in, I don't know, maybe 20 years. And at the same time, we're also dealing with a complex situation of demographic fall and people, especially young people, massively moving out of the country, which resulted in huge losses of citizens. And then on the other hand, more and more people migrated to Croatia in search of jobs in the last 2 years, followed by a growth and normalization of racial violence in media. And that is also something we can connect to this, the first panel that was held today about how journalists have a responsibility to talk about genocide, and it is also something that I feel is not happening on Croatian national TV broadcast, as it is mainly talking about it in terms of war and not genocide, and it is normalizing a huge part of this horrifying violence we're seeing every day and desensitizing a lot of young people. So yes, as I've said, this growth of racial violence, when thinking about participating in international systems of solidarity and action. It is impossible to neglect our local and immediate context that we've just begun addressing through NGOs and other independent media, because Croatia has a problem with systematic racialized police and gender violence, especially on the borders, that is highly neglected and mostly portrayed in the media as an example of an isolated case. So a lot of young people, even friends from activist communities, often feel like there's no other hope than leaving the country, since some of them have been battling the same battles for a long time. And for a lot of people, engaging with the protests for Palestine seems like something out of concrete reach, because they deal with a lot of daily external struggles caused by distrust in government, let alone more direct and protest methods. So as I mentioned, we made this group mailing list. It has been hard to get people involved and actually join us in planning, researching, and taking a more active role in general. So for us, it's very important to start this initiative, because as students we feel obliged to send a message in solidarity with Palestine and to plea for the end of this extreme violence. When talking about Palestine, in a recent interview for Machina RS, Sara noted that we should all feel obliged to listen, learn, and talk about it. And I would also like to tie that in with her views on being able to lean on multiple communities when taking on direct action. And students, as part of academic community, should form that space for Palestine. And we should also find other places where we can form that space. But I think students, and through our practices of formal or informal or whatever knowledge processes we're dealing with, education, we should form that space. So by acting on notions of unifying with the common goal of boycott, we are partaking in forming those spaces and creating more and more pressure points that will hopefully result in the end of decades-long horrifying violence. And as young people, we should take part in these battles, processes, and search for hope while in them for hopefully a better future. Yeah.
So I'd like to, regarding the answer to this question, first I speak from a bit of a peculiar position. Outside of pro-Palestinian organizing, I'm also the current elected president of the only anti-capitalist, let's call it progressive or socialist youth organization currently existing in Serbia, Workers' Youth. And in that sense, I do have a bit of a peculiar position towards this. First, regarding what Lori said about what did 68 do and what did our blockades do, I would say on the basis of concretely achieving what they were hoping for, they didn't do much. At the end of the day, that's unfortunately true. Did we stop the Bologna process with the blockades, both in Serbia, unfortunately both in Slovenia, etc., etc.? We didn't. That just didn't happen. The EU won, and the evil Bologna is now occupying our faculties. Education became for sale, and that's simply something that exists. However, what this did show is exactly why Lori's next point was amazing. The partisans, which were primarily comprised of the youth. They managed to show, first of all, that the youth is a flame. The youth is something that can push forward the entire movement. However, it always needs to be very clearly linked to what was before it. As Marx said, the history of all prior generation lurks as a nightmare on the heads of the living. I'm sorry if I butchered that quote. I know it in Serbian. And what the partisans did is they learned from their older comrades. They always knew what they were fighting for. So, okay, we're here fighting for Palestine. We're fighting against the genocide. That's very clear. But what are we fighting for? So we can't be just anti-fascist. Anti-fascism is a tool. We can't just be anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist. We need to know what we are fighting for. So we need to be clear on an idea of what do we want from this society. When we analyze the problems, when we have problems clear, when we understand why the genocide in Palestine is happening, not because Israelis are evil people or that Jews Jews are evil or something like that, but we understand that the problem is very clear, that it's economic imperialism, it's neoliberal capitalism. We need to learn what we are fighting for. And when we come to that point, we start to understand that the way forward is not just student organizing, it's not organizing on campaigns against smaller scale issues which pop up from time to time. It's not to go into the NGOs, because the NGOs are going to kill every movement ever, as shown throughout simply the history of the past 30, 40 years. But what we do need to achieve is to organize in a political youth organization, or in a broader sense, to organize in a political organization in and of itself. Because that's the only thing that has consistently shown to produce results. That's something that we always need to be aware of. So in that sense, it's very important to be aware that the youth is something that's in Serbia, napržiti, very easy to flame, very to get there. It's very easy to burn against a certain issue. However, it does have typically a problem of settling down. It's youth. That's the whole thing. Jumping around from thing to thing, being very active, very vocal, being empathetic, wanting to change things. However, the problem is that as youth, we first of all do need to learn. What Lori said is very important. We also need to learn, I would like to stress out, from older comrades, because there's a lot of those who are good. A lot of those, in Serbia, we work with some of those who led the entire protest of '68. One of them is still alive. He's a great comrade of ours. He comes to things, I think he is currently 100 or something years old. I'm kidding, but he's a very, very old person. And he's very disappointed with the things that they did in '68. However, he can give you some very good examples of how he thinks things should be done. And when you keep meeting older comrades who fought in struggles that I haven't heard of a lot of the time, since I was born after the privatization started. So I was born after a lot of these struggles started. When I learn from older comrades, that's the only way I'm able to move forward. Besides the books and the hundreds of pages that I can read, what's the most progressive thing for me to do is to link up with other comrades, internationally as well, but also nationally, also on a local level. There are older comrades in, I would say, most of the world who have fought the progressive fight. If there aren't, okay, you're the first generation. The first generation typically never managed to do anything major, but okay, you are here to, as Marx put it, the party is the memory of the working class. You are here to produce something which you can leave. When I stop being a youth in 10 years or something, I can leave an organization to younger comrades. When they finally manage to get rid of me as president, I'm very happy to have someone else take over an organization which I managed to help at least a little bit with the things which I did. And to keep building in that sense, in all senses, we need to be aware that we need to build from ground zero. No one is going to gift us an organization. If you're from a country or a place which has a very developed organization, great. You don't have to start from zero. I didn't start from zero. We already had very developed organizations which simply didn't have, for example, a youth organization which we managed to organize. That's where we had to start from zero. But we had a lot of older comrades who already organized. We joined with them and we started fighting the good fight forwards. So my only suggestion for absolutely everyone is organize. Be aware that Palestine is a symptom of the disease. To fight the disease, you need to organize, organize, organize. And sure, learn. Sure, make mistakes. But the thing is to always keep fighting. And sometimes it's going to take energy out of you. That's why you also need to learn so that you don't waste your time on a lot of things. But you are going to make mistakes. We all make mistakes. That's fine. But organizing and fighting together against a common enemy, fighting for a better future, absolutely only thing that any sane, rational person can do. Thank you.
In our opinion, as a movement, to be a young person in this suffocating world is to be lost, to feel anger, and to feel completely useless most of the times. Okay. Sorry. Noises bother me. But we learned, for example, from our experience in our taking action, lots of people told us that they simply felt useless and that our actions wouldn't bring some solution to problems. That may be true, because things take time. And I'm sure that someone mentioned the partisans before. I'm sure that they felt the same way as we feel now. And I'm sure that they kept fighting just like we should do. So we think that it's important to organize us, to create connections between us, to talk, to educate ourselves with informations that come from resistance, from people who actually know how it is to live and being oppressed, and to listen to our voices and to think that our voices really matter, because only listening to us and our instances, we're writing the history, the future history, and maybe this time we could write it less manipulated by colonialism, imperialism, but we need to take action and organize ourselves. So that's it. To feel our rage is fundamental.
So sadly, we won't have the time to open up the discussion. Can we? Okay, then we can. Perfect. Then, sorry? You want what?
To add a small thing.
Yeah, go.
Okay, I would like what Comrade from Trieste said, something very, very important that I would like to add, especially as a young person. So organizing is kind of boring 99% of the time, and we all feel the way you feel, and that struck a very deep chord in my heart. I always feel like I'm doing nothing, and then you talk to a person who participated in currently fighting in the Indian forests for peasant rights, and they say, oh, we always feel like we're doing nothing. You know, people are on such insane levels of organizing, they always constantly feel like nothing is happening. That's the Lenin sentence, you know, that there are decades where nothing happens, and then weeks where absolutely everything starts to happen. So in that sense, it's gonna feel boring. If you decide, and I hope at least one person from here starts actually organizing, that's a huge step forward. The thing is, you're gonna feel bored a lot of the time, and then suddenly everything is going to begin, and hell is gonna break loose, and then you're gonna become a micro-celebrity overnight, and then everything is again gonna die, and then it's gonna die, and then nothing, and then again, and again, and again. So please just understand that we all feel tired and like we're doing nothing, and that's how we change the world. Okay.
Thank you for your input, Ognjen. I think now we can open up for like 1 or 2 questions, maybe. If anyone has any questions, please raise your hand. We'll get you a microphone. Here you go.
Could you briefly talk about the way union organizing will shape forward those struggles which currently affect Palestine and everyone else currently existing? In translation, the battle for a better world. How will unions play into that?
Okay, do we start the same order or any preferences? The question was about specifically unions and how unions will contribute into the battle. Yeah. So how unionizing will contribute to battles against global systems of oppression. Just beyond Palestine, also like NATO and like global imperialism, everything.
So at this moment in which we are organizing politically, so you might. So there's reasons to have concerns about how unions normally work, or what is. Don't take me wrong. So somehow unions play a very specific role within the system that is still a negotiation within the system, right? But at this level of organization, it must be as useful as it as everything else, in the sense that it provides the tools and the environment for the members to grow and learn. And I mean, of course, as long as they provide a framework to understand where the conflict starts and how it develops and what are the reasons within it, then it's of course going to be useful. How it's going to affect the current situation in Palestine, I mean, I cannot answer, like, as every other kind of political organization, I guess.
Maybe unions could. I think if we had a more unionized workforce, which would be more aware of its precarious position in the world imperialist system, then maybe unions could work to organize together amongst themselves and amongst other organizations to help with those strikes against, for example, in Serbia, the concrete example would be against Yugo import, or what have you, elsewhere against the direct export of arms, or maybe they could show up in other actions in solidarity with those organizations. And I think it could be, if we developed a work line of more aware, socially aware, class aware unions, we could really use that to further societal development.
But what do you understand by union? Like, do you mean a workers' union? In the sense
Workers'
that
union,
syndicates
yes.
and stuff?
Specifically workers' unions and syndicates, and yes.
Anybody else have anything to add? Or we have more questions? Maybe let's start there with the closer ones. Please, could you move a little bit closer, just so, because of the mic?
Hi, I'm Zala, and I'm coming from an organization from Slovenia, and I'm coming from the idea that no one will be free until women are free. So this is like a stance that we kind of work from. And since many of you are also women, I would like to ask you, because I don't know you as collectives, did you also include in your analysis and in your fights like the women's revolution, like the women's perspective? Because now we talked a lot about students and what it should, like what students organizations should mean or should work for, or what it means for the like internationalism and fight for this. So I would also be curious your analysis of this, and also how you include your women's fights in it.
Thank you, Zala. Yes, I think it's quite a big problem actually with youth organizing this, because we focus so much on this youth identity that we often... This is toxic masculinity. Dominant male mentality. So, yes. So we focus so much on our youth identity that we often forget our women identity as well. So I think especially in youth circles, it is much more difficult if we don't, as women, organize autonomously to address patriarchal behavior, patterns that we notice. So I think this is absolutely the moment, and I think we are also lacking here as Arab, like, during the occupation and everything, that this is something that should be also discussed and brought forward, because the attacks on youth are very big, but the attacks are bigger on women. So something that we can absolutely work on in the future.
Yes, I would agree with working on it in the future, since we haven't had many actions. We don't have a lot of plans for the future yet, but of course that the women's movement and the legacy is very important to us. Yes.
I will.
Starting from the fact that we can always talk more about feminism and feminine perspective about the whole situation, for example, the Palestinian situation. As a movement in Trieste, we organized some assemblies where we would talk about, for example, the position of women in Palestine, for example, about how the Zionism treats Palestinian women, and also about how Israeli soldiers, female soldiers, are instrumentalized by the Zionism and the colonialism optic of Israel. So we're working on it, and thank you for your question, because I think it's important on a personal level, and we as a movement think it's fundamental. So yes.
Okay, I as a man now will answer this question. So I come from a party which is, I think, one of the only registered political parties in Serbia. I hope we're not the only one which has a female president, and I am absolutely subservient to her, and especially her regarding the female question. And I think it's actually very important, completely not on an identity basis, as sometimes, especially leftists in Eastern Europe, like to label anything regarding feminism, LGBT, etc., etc. Maybe not in Slovenia, you are Europe. But back home, it's typically labeled as, not a thing of class issue, and therefore something that you don't talk as much. So especially on that front, there are multiple things which were implemented both in pro-Palestinian organizing and in our progressive organizing outside of that. First of all, inside of our organizations and in Workers' Youth, the organization of which I'm president, we insist on having a 50-50 split leadership structure, with 50% of the leadership at all points being women. Something that's currently being very effective in the sense that it gives power to women which typically wouldn't apply to become candidates for any type of position, simply because of the fact there's a more loud man in my, for example, city or something like that, and for that reason I think it's better that he just takes the position. In that sense, a lot of our female comrades did feel empowered enough to actually take more of a leadership position, something that I personally view as effective. In pro-Palestinian organizing, I think we have only ever had 3 male speakers, and I think we have, excluding the ambassador of Palestine, and we have had around 5 or 6 female speakers. And that's also something that we quite insist on, at least managing to get 50-50, and we had this great luck of women being a bigger number of speakers. However, it would be completely me lying to you to tell you that there are more women in the organization than there are men. That's simply not the case, as is a typical problem of the patriarchy, that men do tend to be more active and more vocal in politics, so they do tend to be easier to get into those positions, to want to be speakers, etc., etc. Even in the pro-Palestinian organization, I think we're steadily gaining a nicer number of female members. However, it's still a work in progress. The patriarchy is not something that we're pretending doesn't exist. It very much exists. It's very much a problem. But I'm very happy that in the past month, I think we had 6 new female people joining Workers' Youth and 0 male members joining. And I think that's a step in the right direction.
I would just like to add, because I didn't say this, I got a bit confused and then I just kept talking instead of just stopping. I would like to say that since we're a young group, we weren't thinking about every aspect of our action, but individually we are, there's only 3 of us active at this moment, and we are all women, and individually we are all part of various feminist groups and are partaking in protests and are thinking about feminism, like how to decolonize it and intersectionally. So just to clarify that.
Yeah, so I would like to share about my experience in the Comitato per la Palestina in Udine, because we are a very young organization. We start meeting in May, so we didn't have time because we were like very focused on the things we were doing in the university and then in the city council and stuff. We didn't have time to discuss about how we can, like we are now starting to discuss how we can extend our fights to other things. But it's nice, and this is why I wanted to talk about this, and it's somehow a reason for hope that it was the first time in my life in which I've been to organizations in which you don't have to start talking to people joining about things that should be already clearly accepted for everyone. So there was no need to talk about, like everything was already assumed, like everyone came already with a feminist perspective, which was also enriched by also a class perspective, which it was definitely nice, and also awareness of the trans problematic. So this is very nice because it seems that now at least people are already more aware about these things, which is something that I wanted to share because I was very happy about this.
So I think now we can add one more, like a final question. So who's brave enough to have the final one? I see some hands here. Come a bit closer.
Hello, yes. I was wondering whether you think it is possible to change this current system that we have from within, or do you think it should be changed from without, or would be more effective to change from outside of the system?
I'm going to be very brief. The answer is no. No, I'm kidding. It's useful to use this system. Of course, you're not going to change it from within. So we're not going to be able to bring about social democracy and a perfect utopia or whatever by voting. That's simply something that's not going to happen. And there are countless historical examples which can support this position, and neoliberalism is trying, as Harvey would put it, is trying so desperately in the 21st century to convince us that now, finally, it can happen. But it also tried to convince us in the 90s, in the 80s, in the 60s. It always tried to convince you of that. It can't. It needs to be torn down. You can use the system. You can use it as a platform to speak. You can use it to help workers so that the working class doesn't absolutely bleed out and die. However, you cannot achieve a good, just society by working with neoliberal capitalism and the state given with it.
You can just come to the microphone.
Yeah, come to the microphone.
Salam. So let me first say that this will be a comment that I'm just posing for public reflection, as opposed for a conversation, as opposed for Q&A. First of all, it's very inspiring to hear of your respective experiences, showing that people are willing to sacrifice their safety and security for a greater cause is something indeed very, it's very fundamental for any form of solidarity, right? With that being said, I think just the fact that so much repression is occurring is an indicator that you're doing something right. So keep up the good fight, keep disrupting, and really, South Africa was a prime example, you have to disrupt, make it unbearable for things to change. With that being said, I just wanted to say that first of all, student work, let's try to see it as beyond just the campus. And I invite you to link up with, or at least see what forms of solidarity you can have with Palestinian students in Palestinian universities who are currently being arrested, repressed, and the situation is terrible. Not only in the West Bank, but also the tens of thousands of Palestinian students in 48, in Heartland, who are being kicked out, being rejected from university, etc. And so this is a great opportunity perhaps to kind of see where that intersectionality or those moments can occur. And just something the comrade over there mentioned, Yes, let's also think about solidarity beyond student movements. So when we talk about unions, you mentioned Pinochet, Salvador Allende, right? A big part of why Allende got into power in the first place because workers and students came together, right? So let's think about artists, feminists, farmers, and this could all really take up the notch a bit. So thank you again. Thank you for this minute.
Do any of our comrades want to comment? Some final thoughts, maybe? If not, then I think this marks the end of today's discussion. The debate's gonna follow up with another panel about killer AI or killer states, the use of AI in surveillance and genocide in Palestine and its global context. All of you very welcome to stay and listen to that one as well. I think it's gonna be very interesting. But if I can make a final finishing thought and a bit of remarks about what we learned today, it's that the global systems of oppression go beyond just the question of Palestine, that everything is connected and that we need to organize. The fight will continue even beyond Palestine, even when we're not young anymore. We need to organize in order to fight it, and as long as it exists, we will fight it.